Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar on educational approaches to preventing gender-based violence. So, this session is a part of our series of discussions aimed at discussing pressing social issues and finding solutions through education and advocacy. I am Rizla, and your moderator for today's session. Today's event is hosted by the International Youth Alliance of Peace, an organization dedicated to promote sustainable development and social harmony through gender-based violence, educating youth and empowerment of the youth. So, gender-based violence is a critical issue affecting millions of lives worldwide. As we mark global campaigns like 16 Days Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, it is imperative to reflect on how education can serve as a more powerful tool to create lasting change. So, by focusing on school curricula and community programs, we can instill values of respect, equity, and healthy relationships. So, a warm welcome to all our participants joining us today, whether you are here with us live or tuning in through our live stream. Your presence reflects your commitment to make a difference in this vital area. So, let me introduce our distinguished speaker, Ms. Charuni Gamage. With over 7 years of experience as an attorney at law in Sri Lanka, Ms. Charuni is also a lecturer at prestigious institutions like the University of Colombo and CINEC campus. She holds advanced degree in law, labor relations, and economics, and is an advocate for gender equality. Her work with USAID projects on gender equality and social inclusion has made her a leading voice in this field. So, Ms. Charuni, we are so thrilled to have you here. The stage is now yours, ma'am. We are so loved to hear from you.
Thank you, Rizla. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to speak today for this important session on educational approaches to preventing gender-based violence. And I would like to thank the International Youth Alliance for Peace for inviting me to speak on this critical issue. So, as an attorney at law and as a lecturer, over the next 30 minutes, I will explore how education can be a transformative tool in addressing gender-based violence and fostering a healthier and more respectful communities. Let me share my presentation with you. Gender-based violence, if you can see, or GBV, it's actually, I hope everyone can see this.
Yes. The presentation is visible, ma'am.
Right. Thank you. So gender-based violence is, we call it GBV, is actually a pervasive issue affecting millions worldwide. So it always cuts across cultures, socio-economic levels, and geographies. So basically in Sri Lanka, we have seen like concerning trends of increasing domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence, especially during the pandemic. Then actually the education holds immense potential to prevent GBV as it targets the root causes like harmful attitudes and social norms. So by teaching respect, equality, and empathy, so we can empower individuals and communities to challenge and ultimately change these social norms. Then we will go to the next slide. What is gender-based violence? So as you can see, like the understanding gender-based violence, because it's any harmful act directed at someone based on their gender. When it comes to the gender, it is not like that we have learned earlier, like male and female. The gender now it's concerned as the LGBTQ rights and the transgender rights as well. So this always includes physical violence such as assault, sexual violence such as harassment or exploitation, and also in emotionally the emotional abuse and economic forms as well, like restricting someone's financial independence. So globally, let me tell you, 1 in 3 women experiences physical and or sexual violence in their lifetime. So in Sri Lanka also, post-pandemic data has highlighted a troubling rise in these domestic violence cases. Not only that, sometimes always we mostly hear about the workplace harassments based on the gender. Then this underscores the immediate need for these preventive strategies, and education is one of the most powerful among those things. Then as you can see, these are the types of gender-based violence. It can categorically, we can tell in physical, emotional, economic, and sexual. So why education? That is the most important topic for today. So because education is transformative, it always changes people's mindsets. Then it challenges stereotypes and promote always the empathy. So through education, we can raise awareness about what gender-based violence looks like and what is unacceptable and what we need to do in the near future if we experience such kind of a scenario. So it also empowers the survivors to seek help, and it encourages to intervene, and by embedding the respect and the equality into the educational process. So we lay the foundation for a just and equitable society through educational. Then let's move on to the strategies. So how we are going to integrate gender-based violence prevention strategies in our schools. So in schools, we have a unique opportunity to shape the next generation's understanding of gender as well as the relationships. So first, integrating topics like healthy relationships and consent into the curriculum is really, really important. Like comprehensive sexuality education, CSE. So that helps students to understand their boundaries and the mutual respect. And secondly, we need to train all the teachers to handle these topics very sensitively and more effectively. Then finally, schools must adopt policies like anti-bullying and zero tolerance for harassment, and that will create safe spaces for students to thrive in their own selves. Then engaging the broader community, not only the schools, we need to focus on the communities because all the students come from the communities to the schools. So how we encouraging communities and educate themselves. So while schools play a key role, we cannot ignore this broader community. So always the grassroots programs are very important for engaging parents and youth, teenagers, and community leaders also, because they are the main parts of these GBV prevention strategies. So partnerships also with community organizations, civil organizations, and we can create faith-based groups like to address deep-seated cultural norms. Because as Sri Lanka, a lot of Asian countries, they are multi-cultural and multinational countries. So that we need to interact all these parents, youth, teenagers, civil organizations as our partners to make the education and GBV prevention strategies. And also interactive workshops is a very great way to challenge harmful myths and equip individuals with practical knowledge about this gender-based violence and how to prevent that. And not only the campaigns, programs, media and technology in education also is a vital part of our strategies. Then because they can play a powerful tool as to amplify this message of gender equality. So like social media campaigns, like the globally renowned, as you have heard, maybe he for she. So that sort of work, social media campaigns engage broader audiences in discussion about gender-based violence. So we can also use digital tools such as apps to report violence or access resources by other parties. So these platforms make education more accessible and impactful, and especially for younger and tech-savvy generations. Then, what are the challenges in implementing these gender-based violence prevention strategies through education? So, implementing educational programs to prevent GBV is not without any challenges. It's always a tough part. Then cultural resistance, as I told you earlier, is one major barrier because it discusses GBV is often seen as a taboo. Then resource gaps, such as insufficient funding for teacher training and limit the reach of these programs. And reaching marginalized groups and such as those rural areas poses additional challenges due to language and the geographical barriers as well. So in order to overcome those challenges, we need to build the trust with those marginalized communities and use the languages that they are comfortable with, and advocate for increased policy as well as the financial support also. Then we cannot do anything for gender-based violence prevention strategies without the legal framework. So legal framework is another important aspect of education to prevent GBV. So education must go always hand in hand with legal awareness. So basically in Sri Lanka, laws like Prevention of Domestic Violence Act is very crucial act. But many people remain unaware, unfortunately, of their rights and legal protection. And so integrating this legal literacy into educational programs always ensure these individuals, school children, parents, youth, and communities, especially the survivors, also know how to access to the support systems and seek the justice for themselves. So workshop always to combining this legal knowledge with practical advice can be particularly effective in education to prevent GBV in today's world. And let me give you some examples for successful initiatives in GBV prevention strategies. So the Safe School program by UNESCO is a global initiative that has created a violence-free environment in schools. And in Sri Lanka, a lot of civil organizations, community organizations and NGOs have conducted community workshops to address this gender-based violence by engaging directly with vulnerable populations. Then interactive learning methods such as role play exercises and help participants to internalize key messages and apply them in real scenarios. That's how we can do successfully through educate them to prevent GBV in Sri Lanka. Then what about the recommendations for action to prevent gender-based violence in your country? So to conclude my presentation, here are some recommendations for different stakeholders. For schools, we can say we need mandatory gender sensitivity training and well-integrated curricula on equality and respect. Because schools are more important, the school children has to gain that knowledge through those programs, and teachers also have to be really trained to deliver the effective and more responsible and more sensitively addressing these situations in schools. Then for communities, we can say the regular workshops and partnerships with local organizations are a key factor. And we can engage the private sector also for this, because as we can see, mostly in the private sector, the work harassments based on the gender, we can see it everywhere mostly, but people remain silent. So we can, through the civil organizations, we can engage the private sector employees and as a stakeholder. Then for government, we need strong policies and the mandates to fund these educational initiatives, because always, as you can see, education changes people. Then through education, we can make a big difference. So together with these stakeholders, these steps can create a comprehensive approach to prevent gender-based violence in a country. Then, as an individual, what you can do to prevent GBV, not only the stakeholders, you as an individual have a main responsibility in day-to-day life to make a difference. So each of us, everyone, has a role to play preventing this gender-based violence. You can educate yourself, and you can educate others also about the issues with regard to the gender-based violence. And you can be an advocate for inclusive education policies. Then you can support individually the survivors and amplify their voices. So lastly, I would like to quote a quotation by Nelson Mandela, because as he told, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. So you can educate others as well. So let's use it to change the world for better. Then I would like to conclude my presentation, and thank you all for your time and attention. And I am grateful for International Youth Alliances for Peace for organizing this platform to discuss such an important topic for 16 consecutive sessions. And I now welcome Rizla for her questions, and all of you to your thoughts and welcomes. So let's make this as a collaborative dialogue. Over to you, Rizla.
Yes, Miss Charuni, and all of the points that you have mentioned are really insightful. And as a law student, I also personally agree that the Domestic Violence Act is not that much aware to people, and the Educating Domestic Violence Act is really important at this current point that we are seeing so much of violences. at home, and there are so much of unreported case, and they don't even know that we can tell them out, and we can get helps from the courts and judicial system in the country as well. So as you mentioned, that the education is the most powerful weapon, and it should reach from to all people in this country as well. And thank you once again for taking your time to share these insightful examples and recommendations specifically. And the program and strategies you have mentioned are incredibly helpful, and I truly appreciate your effort in providing such a detailed presentation, Ms. Charuni. And so, when delve more to the part based on gender-based violence and education, I would like to ask few questions from my end. So, could you just share any specific programs or curricula you have worked with or recommend that effectively address gender-based violence to education, as you mentioned in the presentation, as UNESCO's recommendations and the initiative, as what are the initiatives that you have worked and what you think are most suitable and effective to current Sri Lanka?
Certainly. Actually, I have worked with and I have participated a lot of USAID gender-based violence training sessions. They educate their staff. Firstly, to decrease the workplace harassments based on the gender, and then they educate us as the trainers to go to the societies through our programs and through their projects all over the world, in each and every country that they are working on in the development sector. So they actually train us to be the advocates for preventing gender-based violence. That actually seen me a really good thing, because not only the gender-based violence, we have to think about the gender to have promote the gender equality as well as the social inclusion with the gender equality. That is more concerning part when we talk about the gender based violence. And I have seen the locally the initiatives like organizations like Women and Media Collective in Sri Lanka. They focus on empowering youth with gender sensitivity and leadership training. So in schools also, a lot of interactive models that include like case studies, role playing, and peer discussions. There are a lot of programs like that. So they have proven very effective method to decrease the gender-based violence in schools. So these approaches not only teach the theoretical aspects of gender equality, but also foster the empathy and the critical thinking among the students and the youth. And as I have seen, Women in Need organization in Sri Lanka, and the Care International program that engaging men to prevent violence. Then UNFPA's work on comprehensive sexuality education, and there are gender-based violence prevention programs conducted by Family Planning Association of Sri Lanka. So all these programs always gives a more effective platform to decrease the gender-based violence in Sri Lanka. I think not only that, the civil organizations are doing their most of this platform, but I think the government also should play a critical role, I think, to address this gender-based violence, because it happens not only in schools but also in the workplaces, equally in the government sector as well as in the private sector. So the policies and the mandates also should be more effective to decrease the gender-based violence in Sri Lanka.
Yes, madam. Thank you so much for the insightful answer. So, when moving to the next question, like, do you have any suggestions for engaging both educators and students in conversations about gender equality and healthy relationships in effective way? Like, as you mentioned in your presentation as well, like workshops would work really well. But apart from that, what do you think, like, how can educators and students can engage in a very effective manner, because students nowadays, they need some kind of educations, as you mentioned, like the sex education and the rights of other genders, like marginalized communities, vulnerable communities like LGBTQ and all. So how do you think, and what's your view on what are the ways that are available to interact both educators and students?
Right. From the educator's perspective, engaging educators, we can provide teacher training workshops on gender sensitivity, teaching practices, and handling sensitive topics like consent or power dynamics to them. Because this is a sensitive matter, you have to address with your students. Then it has to be highly confidential also. Then we have to educate themselves with that sensitivity factor. Then you can develop easy to use resource packs with activities and conversation starters. And for the students, we can actually incorporate interactive learning methods like debates, storytelling sessions, and counseling sessions, and group projects, also focusing on this gender equality and respect all genders. Then not only that, now the digital space is playing a key role in all over the world. So we can use the media and technology, like such as short films, some apps, digital apps, to make this topic very relatable and engaging with the students and the teachers also. And active participation is always fosters this mutual understanding and challenges stereotypes in both groups. And not only that, I personally think that we need to bring a curricular to the education sector in Sri Lanka. Like the sexual education, we need to bring at least like a elective unit to give the understanding about the gender-based violence.
Yes, madam. Thank you once again for that effective and insightful answer. So, as when delving more, like as we're talking about education, and education does not stop at schools and institutions like universities and all. So now the education is spreaded all over the world, and there are so many various ways to learn and to improve our knowledge on various aspects. So social media plays a huge role when it comes to education nowadays. So, what do you think that social media's role in when it comes to gender-based violence and education? What's social media's role?
So basically, as you can see, when it comes to the gender-based violence, social media can play a vital role in that. Because now everyone using a smartphone, and internet is all over the world, and we are heading to the generative AI space also, and we are experiencing it, but not in positive way, mostly in negative way. So in that scenario, I think social media can play a key role to prevent come across with some strategies to educate people more, because it can accessible more people than educating one school or one university, or one individual or one community. So everyone can access to internet, so through that we can engage a huge audience. And through all the programs, if we can by the films, short films, and other social media campaigns, basically the advertisements, if we can address this gender-based violence issues and preventing strategies through that, I think we can access to more in this context.
Yes, madam. And as you mentioned, like social medias play a huge role in this, and it is a source that it educates from people who are educated, as you know, they have educated from school level, universities or whatever. From people who are in lower level or to higher level, they have access to social media. So that is one of the best platform, as you mentioned, if we use it in the correct way and with correct information. So when delving more, I would like to ask from you, like, how can we measure the impact of such educational programs in fostering gender equality and reducing violence? So, what's your thought on the measuring the impact of those educational programs?
I think, Rusla, measuring this impact should be involved both quantitative and qualitative methods. Because we can have the questionnaires and the post-program surveys to assess the changing in our attitudes and the knowledge about this gender equality and the violence. That is one way. And we can say the behavioral indicators like increased reporting of incidents or observed reduction in harassment cases, that provides some tangible outcomes. Let's say like behavioral indicators means we can observe qualitatively, and we can have face-to-face interviews, and we can have confidential interviews to get the fact for behavioral indicators. Then we can see whether there is a decreasement in this gender-based violence. And mostly we can conduct focus group discussions with participants to gather insights and how the programs influence their perspectives and how the programs influence their behaviors also. So long-term tracking, such as we can have the follow-up surveys, we can have follow-up behavioral indicators and focus group discussions also after our programs. Those can reveal how deeply the program's lessons have been internalized and applied in individuals' life. So that is that has to be always quantitatively as well as qualitatively.
Thank you so much, madam. And it was really thoughtful, and the measures you have given are really impact strategies, particularly helpful for the work. And I appreciate really your clear and practical advice. So, when interact with Q&A, before we go into that, we'll now conclude the live